Well, welcome to the ATX DAO Podcast. We are very excited to welcome our guest today. We have Kyle Langham from DeFINITY and Internet Computer. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to have you with us, man. So we were chatting a little bit before the show today, just about some of the stuff that you're doing, but want to just kind of dig in for maybe folks that aren't as familiar with ICP and some of the stuff that goes on there. Maybe just give a little bit of a rundown into kind of the ecosystem, kind of what ICP is and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so ICP actually, the idea behind it is from the early days of Ethereum, back when there was this concept of like a world computer. And the idea is like, you think about what your web experience is, and about 90% of that is like controlled by four companies, right? Amazon with Amazon Web Services, Google with Google Cloud, Microsoft with Azure, and then Alibaba Cloud. And like that defines basically kind of like our web lives. And so the idea of a world computer was a hosting service where it's backed by blockchain, it's decentralized, so anyone can host their application on it. And Ethereum ended up pivoting because the technology wasn't ready at the time. They wanted to get to market really quick, but then there were a couple people part of that early Ethereum group, or early, the community that became Ethereum, most notably Dominic Williams, who would not let go of the world computer vision. So he ended up creating DeFINITY to kind of continue that flag of the world computer. And that's essentially what the internet computer is. You can host entire applications fully on chain. So the front end, the back end, your data, you can do, HTTPS outcalls. So you can run API services from the blockchain. We're over the years have integrated with every major blockchains like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, just keep going down the list. And so the idea is, again, like, we see this world in which decentralization brings a whole lot of benefit to society, and then a whole lot of like new areas of innovation. And so we're trying to, encourage more and more of our software stacks to move on chain.
Yeah, no, I love that. So would love to dig into just a little bit about how that actually works, right? Because I think that's, like, to your point, I think when Ethereum was founded, that was like the title for it, the world computer. And, as we've seen, that didn't really necessarily, there's that separation between on-chain activity and off. So just kind of interested in kind of what allows that to happen with internet computer.
Yeah, so a lot of it is so there's a couple of key unlocks, I guess, that I would say DeFINITY kind of discovered along the way. One is like horizontal scaling. So you need a blockchain that, like is kind of like a sharded, so that as more and more activity comes on chain, you can just stand up new shards. We call them subnets. So that's one thing. The second thing is like you just need a robust consensus mechanism. For a long time, I haven't looked at the stats recently to know if this is still true, but at one point, DeFINITY Foundation was the largest, or one of the largest employers of cryptographers, not associated with a government agency. And so, that kind of like deep technical knowledge was extremely important to get the internet computer stood up and continue to operate. And then beyond that, it's just, again, an ethos around not rushing to market, around not sacrificing on that world computer vision, has kind of been like the guiding star for DeFINITY all these years. And I think now that, internet computer's been launched for over 4 years now, and now we're starting to understand. At first, it was like an idea, and I was like, let's get this thing out there, let's get it built, let's get it out there. And now we're starting to discover like what are like the actual true unlocks of having a world computer. And so, I would say we probably spent too much time trying to do the traditional Web3 game, which, I think Solana, Ethereum have kind of shown that like you don't need everything on chain to compete in this. People are fine with like, most front ends run on AWS, for example, that are running Ethereum or Solana apps. We try to compete in that avenue, but now we've kind of recently started to find our niche in a couple different areas that we could probably get to later.
One of the things that you mentioned as well that I was really interested in is the integration with other chains, right? So not all chains have that functionality, but folks that build on those chains still want decentralization and that type of thing. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that and how somebody on Bitcoin, and I want to get into the app that you built the other day, because I know that one was related to Bitcoin. But kind of how another chain might use ICP in addition to what they might have natively.
Yeah, so Bitcoin was the first blockchain we integrated with, and that's a native integration. So what that actually means is there's a Bitcoin node running on the internet computer that is actually continually being updated with the Bitcoin block data. I think just me saying that kind of gives you an idea of the capability of the internet computer and what we can host on chain. Is that like the entire state of Bitcoin lives as a smart contract on ICP. And then we layered on top of that two different threshold signature schemes. One is threshold ECDSA, which is what like Bitcoin native uses as its signing. So essentially, nodes on ICP you can essentially take a private key to a Bitcoin address, shard it across all the nodes on ICP, so that no node has more than some percentage of the key, and then without even reassembling the key, those nodes can combine to sign a Bitcoin transaction against that wallet. So now you obviously brings smart contract functionality to Bitcoin, where you can have an ICP smart contract capable of signing transactions to Bitcoin. And then last year, and this was kind of one of the key unlocks, was we did threshold Schnorr signature, which unlocks Taproot assets. So you're seeing a lot of runes and BRC20s and ordinals applications exploring using ICP as like the logic layer, but then keeping settlement back on Bitcoin. And that's kind of a really nice. You can do a lot of really cool things that makes Bitcoin much more palatable for for DeFi applications and GameFi and SocialFi. And so that's where we're seeing a lot. We're seeing a lot of growth in that area right now.
Is that like your man in the arena? Right? Like, firstly, kudos to the man in the arena, poster or, art that you have in the back. That's fucking awesome. Those who know. A shout out to Teddy. But like, is that like the man in the arena or the user to channel kind of focus for ICP right now? Where it's like, you know, one of the things that I think about is like, and this is kind of a tangent, like I've been having a lot of conversations with people throughout the day in the past week and stuff like that. Like there's like world beating ideas, right? But you need like a beachhead. And like, so are you thinking that with the Bitcoin thing, ICP can basically be like, hey, we can bring compute to UTXO environments, to one of the, to the thing that birthed us all. And that would be a great beachhead for ICP.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's I would, if you want to equate the man in the arena art behind me to ICP, I would say we launched in 2021. A lot of blockchains launched around that time. And I would say the structure of ICP or DFINITY Foundation is like 80% R&D, 20% everything else, including marketing. I think in 2021, the industry was more focused on 80% marketing, 20% everything else, including R&D. And I think that's been kind of our ethos, is like, no, we want to focus on technology and build a tech stack that with like a 20-year look. And so I think that's the man in the arena, is we get a lot of stuff thrown at us verbally and stuff like that. A lot of people say like ICP stands for I can't pump, which is related to the token, things like that, like those kind of like jabs. And I would say like for us, that's I'm sorry.
I thought you were going to say insane clown posse.
Well, that's the other one too. Yeah, that's actually a good meme within the ICP community. But no, I mean, I think from our standpoint, it's more of we kind of think of it as maybe a good way to say it is, if you think of the internet as a whole, you had like social media in 2005, you had the gig economy in like 2009, you had SaaS software like 2012, 2013. And then I would say up until we had ChatGPT 10 years later, there was like really not a lot of innovation online, like no new market verticals being formed. And so we kind of think of it more as like, if we can kind of just build a strong foundation in which innovators can come along and think of interesting ways to use these features and these and this foundation, then cool things will happen. And I always say, like, this is probably the best way to say it, is like when you think about Uber, cell phones were around for many years before Uber. GPS data was around for many years before Uber. Credit cards online were around for decades before Uber. But it took years for somebody to kind of realize like, oh, these couple features combined together can disrupt the taxi industry. And I think that's how we think of it, is like, you provide some functionality to Bitcoin, you provide functionality to Solana, you provide some functionality to Ethereum, you provide functionality to cybersecurity experts or Web 2 context. There's a lot of different avenues, and our job is to build that foundation. It's innovators to come along and say, "Ooh, actually, if I use these couple things, pair them together in a great product, this is world changing."
Okay, so your mission is still very much world computer focused. It's like our mission is to like basically be the backbone for, you know, all of crypto in a sense, right? Like outside of the direct applications that are there, or like where builders find themselves at the like parent chain, right? Whether it's Bitcoin or Dogecoin or Solana, like you're looking for that state and logic execution environment to occur on ICP.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Let the token transfer happen on the other chains, and we'll take the, data storage, we'll take the web 2 integration, we'll take all the other components that are currently on AWS. We'd like to move those over to ICP.
Cool. That's awesome. So kind of thinking about that. So you mentioned Bitcoin is a big one. So let's say it's a chain, another chain. So Solana, I think you mentioned as well. So what does that take for a Solana builder, for example, to use y'all instead of AWS or something else?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same. I mean, it just requires moving those components to ICP. The smart contract on Solana can stay the same, and instead you build those functionalities on ICP where it can read the smart contract state, it can read the entire Solana state, and then it can write back to your smart contract. And so at that point, then like you can, you know, basically all those components that are off chain can be brought on chain.
Nice.
A couple things like, you can code in, most people do React for the front end, but you can do TypeScript on the back end. You can do Rust. You can do, we have our own language called Motoko. So try to keep it as flexible as possible for developers to come on board. And again, like we've been very focused on basically you want to be like feature parity with like the AWSs and the Google Clouds. Now we're obviously not going to reach the same scale because those are $1 trillion, businesses that have been built. We can't compete on, let's say, price or speed, but what we can compete on are things like privacy and security, uptime. Like I don't know, 2 months ago, AWS went down and the Bitcoin mempool got shallow, like really shallow. And it just kind of shows you how much we're dependent on Amazon to be around and be up, kind of a thing. So
Yeah.
Gotta ask also, like, so then, like, what in your mind, what is the ideal application that looks at this dual surface kind of dual application or dual kind of like surface area kind of deployment? Like, you must see a lot, right? Like if you're trying to be like, hey, we want to take all your AWS stuff that's across all these chains and deploy it on world computer, right? Obviously, like you said, like, bro, you need to be, if it's privacy focused, if there's certain specific applications, this is the ideal thing. But I'm just wondering, like, what is that for you, considering you have such a unique vantage point for it?
yeah, I mean, where I sit, and I was a Bitcoiner before I was into ICP, so I always come back to Bitcoin. ICP just extends the functionality of Bitcoin so well in terms of smart contract logic. Like that is just a clear use, and that's why ICP as like a side chain to Bitcoin is a really big area. There's a couple other really interesting things. So I think like people use ICP as like an interoperability layer. So we see a lot of people building like hubs that basically can move tokens from one chain to another, just using ICP as like the middleman who kind of governs it all. And then the area where I think we think ICP goes from like uh, uh, kind of its current state to like absolutely exploded, trying to actually challenge AWS, Google Cloud, is actually in the vibe coding space. So you see all these new platforms that are coming out, like Lovable or Google Firebase Studio. There's probably like 12 of them on the market. And what when if you use one of those products, you kind of start to realize like there's friction between when you tell the LLM what you want it to build, it might build out the code for you. But then when you try to go to deploy it, you get a little bit more complexity and stuff. And so it really is still for developers because you have to understand like database relationships and kind of like the interaction between front end and back end and that kind of stuff, especially if you want to update your app after you've already gone live and you have user data. ICP, it turns out, is actually a phenomenal back end for that use case. And so that's where we think that the future really lies is vibe coding ICP smart contracts or ICP apps. So apps that live completely on ICP, but vibe coding it from like a every day your mom and pop, like, your mom can just tell, I want an application that is going to help me plan my next birthday party or something like that. And she just describes what she wants. She hits push to the internet, it all of a sudden goes live, and now anyone in the world can come and use her application. And then if she wants to change it, she can just go back to the chat app, tell it what it wants to change. She doesn't lose any of her user data. She doesn't lose her app. The thing just happens like that. So you kind of can. I think that's really the future for ICP, is this world where everyone who's not a developer all of a sudden now has the ability to launch their own applications with like their own, as whatever creativity they want to bring to it. And then they can manage the lifecycle of that application without ever touching a single line of code or a single piece of infrastructure.
That's awesome, and I love that it's like a Web 2 usage, but then also Web 3 integration as well. So I did. I think I mentioned before. I did get a chance to catch a little bit of a live stream you did yesterday, or at least yesterday at time of recording, where you're using Caffeine AI to create an on-chain game or a series of games. I think you had several of them in there, but it required the use of runes tokens on Bitcoin. So I'd love you just to kind of chat a little bit about maybe a little bit about caffeine, but also just kind of the experience with that, because I think you did built that whole thing in 30 minutes, something like that. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, would love you to chat a little more about that.
Yeah, so Caffeine AI is basically the application that does what we are just saying, which is this chat to app for like managing both creation of the code, the deployment of the code, and then the life cycle of the application. And the target audience is people who wouldn't know the first thing about coding or any networking or anything like that, just everyday people. Again, ICP is a great ICP really competes with the Amazon Web Services and the Google Clouds of the world in terms of its tech stack, because it doesn't carry all this technical debt from 20 years ago and things like that. And blockchain by itself just tends to actually be very, for a variety of different reasons, just makes it a nice, easy way to build an application like Caffeine AI. But also the really nice thing that, of course, me being in Web3 and of course me being a Bitcoiner, is that when you launch an application on Caffeine, the application comes with all the benefits of ICP. And so Caffeine's new. We just launched alpha a month ago. I just got my early access code. So even as a DeFINITY employee, I haven't had access. I've played in the dev environment before, so I kind of knew the application, but this is my first time using the production environment. I played around with it a little bit, and then instantly was like, I want to build some functionality for runes tokens. I want to start showing the community like, hey, this is what's coming down the pipeline. And so I built just a simple arcade game. So I called it Pup Arcade. So there's a rune called Pup with Woof of Work. And essentially the arcade's only open if somebody in the last hour has bought Pup off of a DEX, then it's open. And there's just 5 Pup flavored games of like Whack a Pup, Hunt a Pup, which was like Buck Hunter in the arcade. Or the other games. There's a claw game. And again, all of that, like the integration with the decks, the creation of the games, me kind of being like, oh, I don't like this, change the game to do this. I had a lot of problems with it getting to make a leaderboard that actually worked. But all of that just took me 30 minutes from start to finish. And then I came back yesterday and made another live stream that was 15 minutes. I was like, now I want to change these games around. This game kind of sucks. Let's change it to this and that kind of stuff. And in 15 minutes modified the entire game. And that's kind of the future. It's like 45 minutes total. And I've got something that like, it's not great because I only put 45 minutes into it, but it's good enough that I'm like, hey, this there's some potential here. And I've got plans for the next thing I'm gonna build, which will be I'll be much prouder of. So
That's so cool. I gotta ask, so are you looking at Caffeine AI to be a vertical to get founders from who are not familiar with ICP to be like, oh, I can use Caffeine AI to like look at using ICP to do that AWS backend deployment? Or are you thinking of it as like, no, bro, like we're looking at Caffeine AI to like go to founders that are just familiar with NLP kind of surfaces to deploy stuff rather than just code base, to just be like, they just literally deploy out of the box on ICP.
I mean, I think my opinion, if you ask a lot of people within DeFINITY, you might get a different answer. My opinion is if caffeine takes over the world, most people won't know ICP is under the back, like, under the hood. Just like, when I go use a phenomenal website, like, it's not like when I go to use Uber, I'm like, wait, hold on, what are they using for their database structure here? Like
Yeah.
the tech stack doesn't matter. I think most consumers don't care. And really, like I think of caffeine in the case. So I think of it as like a consumer model where you haven't. I kind of think of it as like ephemeral software. Like I have a need. I want this software to exist in the world. I don't want to download 15 apps to see which one actually does this. I'm just going to go to my chat app. I'm going to spend 5 minutes. It's going to build it for me, and then I'm going to use it. And then maybe 2 months from now, I don't really care anymore. That's one use case I think that humans have never had access to. The second use case I think will be, if you mentioned founders, I think it's just proof of concept. Like you have an idea and all of a sudden now within like a course of an afternoon or maybe even a couple days, you can go from, idea to proof of concept and get it out into the market and test it. So I think of it in that sense as well, where if you want to prove out an idea, you can get that out in the market. You don't have to be like, all right, I got a fundraise, so now I can go hire a dev team so that 4 months from now I'll have a proof of concept, and then we can figure out the market. Like, no, just you have an idea. The next day you have an app, you have it in the market, you start marketing it, and you start learning about what works, what doesn't work, and then you can evolve it very, very fast. I think that's the use case. And then the final use case, and this is more like 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the line, is I think the idea of like downloading apps is going to get radically changed, and instead you're going to clone apps. So, for example, you download an app onto your phone, and you're kind of like you're just a consumer of that app. You have no say into the app. The next upgrade, you might say, "Hey, this part sucks," and maybe they take your feedback and they fix it. But you have no like everything on your phone, and your phone kind of dictates your life. Everything on your phone is at the whims of somebody in an office somewhere. Instead, I think you actually clone apps, and now you have the app as the developer intended in your chat, like in your environment. But you can go into the chat and say, like, these features, I don't ever use these. Take these off. I don't want them on the user interface. This user interface is too boring. Make it more flashy. You could kind of start evolving that app so it fits you instead of whatever the developer thought you wanted.
Yes, that is absolutely needed. It's funny that you say that because I was actually literally had that experience earlier this week. So I'm starting a run streak where I run every single day for a period of time, and I was looking for habit tracker apps, and the one that I found, everything was great except for the fact that they assumed that you did not start the habit before you downloaded their app. So,
Mm.
and you cannot backdate it. It's just like a design decision that whoever the product manager made, and you can't change it. So I've started the streak like before I downloaded the app, and I want it to be accurate. I want it to say I've run 38 days in a row or whatever, and they just don't do it. And if I had that functionality you just said, I could just change that one feature and I'd be happy using this app and it'd be amazing. So I feel like so needed.
100%. There's no way to better piss off a human being than to not give them credit for a streak.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, but I think that this is kind of like, and this is still early days. Again, caffeine's in alpha, but I mean, you saw on the live stream what I was able to do, and I'm kind of still exploring what's possible in caffeine. I think the next live stream I'll do, which will be later this week, at least at the time of recording this, I think that that's going to be a lot more feature rich and a lot more complex. And I think that I'm starting to learn how to actually tailor my prompts to get the app to get closer to what I want it to be.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And we'll definitely link them in the show notes too. So if listeners or viewers, if you want to check that out, we'll have links in there to both the original one that we've been talking about and then also the future one that Kyle's working on as well.
Yeah.
So that one kind of gets the Web3. Again, I'm too degen on Web3, but like the next one's going to be like, there's going to be a subscription model. So I want to make sure like I can build an app that users have to send me a token in order to use the app. And then they're going to have to do it like month after month to keep using the app. So again, like I'm kind of like experimenting with these. How do we turn this into a business? That kind of stuff. So what's possible, what isn't possible.
Yeah, that's such an interesting way to think about it, right? That's a very interesting business model just on a tangent, right? Like thinking about like what is the level of subscription service that you need to do for your ideal user for them to come back to use your IDE or your NLP wrapper with a model that's there, right? Um and everyone has tried these very different mechanics. And I think that's one of the reasons why like they have pay as you go kind of functionalities, right? Token as you go is functionalities, which is perfectly aligned with crypto if you really think about it, right? Because like no one wants to say that like I'm going to pay $20 a month to like vibe code And the reality is like, bro, like you're probably not going to use it $20 a month, right? Like you're probably going to maybe use it maybe like 5, 10, $15, right? And as a result, this pay as you go model is a very interesting model. I'm sorry, that was just like a weird kind of interesting kind of like tidbit that I thought about when I was walking this morning, because like so many teams I see are using in crypto and outside of crypto, like all these various different models that they have subscriptions for. And I'm like, it's kind of funny. You have like an annual subscription and you're like, dude, that model's a piece of fucking shit. Uh, and it's like, yeah, but like, I'm already stuck with it. And it's like, now the switching costs are like so low. So pay as you go models are very, very good to have, which is very interesting. But I'm really excited about checking out Caffeine. Like this is a very smart go to market about collecting a bunch of builders and then also making, lowering the barriers of entry to like anyone and everyone, right? Like seems like a product that I can get my mom to be like, hey mom, go deploy an app on ICP, which would be kind of interesting to look at.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you wouldn't even say go deploy an app on ICP. You'd say just go build your website, go build your app, and then the fact that it's on ICP doesn't matter. Even like going to your idea of like the annoyance of, not the annoyance, the how do you set the right pricing structure for your service? You mentioned a few different kinds, and this is, I think, where you get it with the caffeine, right? Like if you're an entrepreneur and you want to explore a couple different models, like you have the idea for the product, you know what the product is, but you don't know, there's maybe like a design space where you're like, I'm not sure like the pricing model, I'm not sure how much information to collect from the user. Like the idea of like you could launch this thing 6 times and try it in like 6 different markets pretty quickly without really having to sit and recode everything and all that kind of stuff. Like that again, that comes to this, like, I'm going to just experiment till I find what exactly the market wants. Once I find that, boom, I'm going to dive down that path a lot. I'm going all in on that path.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah, like I'm really excited about it. I didn't know about caffeine until literally I showed up to the pod. And once again, I'm sorry for showing up, and in such a disheveled mess. But like, honestly, I'm slate some time this week to check out caffeine. The other cool thing that I'm sorry, just on on a tangent on this, I think it'd be really interesting to explore context engineering windows in relation to the interoperability aspect that you have with ICP. If you're thinking about like, hey, like we not only have caffeine to be like, not only can you deploy an application and it's synonymous with the web, right? Like you think about like, oh, what if I'm porting something from here and I want to move it to here and I want to vibe code it and then take it on further? That's very interesting to like think about. Like that's a science in an area of ML that's just coming up right now in like Web 2 environments. It'd be really interesting to see how you guys think about approaching that for Web 3 and the interoperability aspect.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how much we've thought through that. I think right now we're focused more on get the core product. In fact, Dominic Williams, if you follow him on Twitter, he's Dominic_W. He put out a roadmap for caffeine, and literally interoperability is like it's like phase 5 of the caffeine rollout, and it doesn't have a date. And now I showed in the live stream that there's still ways to get a little bit of interoperability by kind of like being smart about how you do it. But I mean, really, like you think about what caffeine could do, especially with the interoperability, is if you have a Solana, like you could build a Solana app that is hosted on ICP. We obviously can't deploy a smart contract to Solana. What we can do is like if there's already a smart contract, we can read and write to it, that kind of stuff. So you could start to imagine how this, again, like interoperability is about bringing the good parts of ICP to all the blockchains. And so caffeine would be one of those. When I talk with people, every time I've talked to somebody about caffeine who is in crypto, they say AI, we will never use AI to send crypto back and forth. Like you'll never use AI. You'll never trust an AI with your Bitcoin wallet. You'll never trust, AI to do ABC. And I always am like, I'm old enough to remember when eBay was a new thing. And when you actually, and people don't realize this, but there was a time and place in eBay's history. And what's funny is people are probably like the younger generation's probably like, what the hell is he even talking about eBay? What is eBay? But there was a time where you wrote a physical check. If you won an auction on eBay, you wrote a physical check. You mailed that physical check to somebody. They went and they cashed it. when their money ended up in their account, they sent you the item you purchased. And that was totally okay. And it was okay because people said, if you put your credit card online, it's everyone, your money's just gonna be drained. Like that was like the worst thing you could possibly ever do in life. You can murder somebody, and that's still a better thing than putting your credit card into a website. Like that was a thing in like 1997. PayPal came around, basically flipped that on its head, said, no, this is a solution to this problem. And now we have like e-commerce was like, so 97, you should never put your credit card online. By 99, e-commerce was the hottest thing in the industry. And that's exactly the same thing that's going to happen here. There's going to be 6 months of people using AI, creating like a Bitcoin app, people losing their Bitcoin because of it. And the market's going to find a quick solution to that. And you're going to be, I don't see that as a problem for longer than a couple months, honestly.
Yeah, I definitely
so
think. I
agree.
mean, it'll evolve quite a bit. I know, so we sit in a decentralized AI office here, and there's a team called Morpheus that's here, and that's one of their key missions is to have the ability for AI to manage your wallet for you. You can just tell it what you want to do; it'll execute everything. So it definitely something that people will start to trust as they see more things. I think you might want to wait till ChatGPT gets rid of M dashes. I think if you can't get rid of the M dashes, can't trust it with my wallet yet, but later.
Morpheus is doing God's work because, I mean, the user experience in crypto, somehow we decided we were going to go 7 steps backwards, which is really like limiting our industry's growth because it's hard to onboard people when the user experience is much worse in crypto than is what they expect in traditional.
We chatted a lot about kind of building on ICP. Would love to talk a little bit more about from a user perspective. So like some of the native things that are there. Obviously that'll be kind of the normal things like DEXs, those kinds of things. But any projects that are going on within the ecosystem that you're particularly excited about or you think would be like good to highlight for anybody that might be just kind of dipping their toe in and wanting to explore what's out there with ICP?
Yeah, I mean, a few things I'll highlight. Again, Bitcoin DeFi is a big thing. Odin.fun is probably it's probably the most successful Bitcoin DeFi app out there. They've done something like 6,000 Bitcoin in volume in the I don't know 5 months that they've been live. Liquidium is a company to follow along. They're doing kind of like what Aave is in the Ethereum world. They're trying to do that borrow lending across all chains, which really hopefully makes liquidity flow really well throughout our whole industry. Ethereum, Bitcoin, and Solana, Cardano, wherever else liquidity is sitting. That's an app to follow. I think Oizy Wallet is an interesting solution. It's a browser-based wallet rather than a Chrome extension. You're starting to see Google crack down a lot more on, like Google Play. The Play Store can no longer host, certain wallets, and I think that there's rumors that Google is going to limit wallet extensions. But Oizy is a browser-based one that's again multi-chain and can hold all your different cryptocurrencies. I'm trying to think what else is. I'll settle there. I feel like I'll just keep going on and on.
What's the most frequent app that you use in ICP?
The one I use the most, I was using Odin.fun a lot. Recently, I've been doing an app called Blockminer.fun, which launches runes, but using proof of work. So that's probably the one I've been using the most recently. I mean, obviously, like using some of the ICP DEXs as I move my tokens around. I do a lot in the NNS, which is the governance system for ICP. I like to participate, nerd out in different governance proposals, and then for not only ICP, but then also like we have this concept of an SNS, which is like if you built an app and you want to decentralize the ownership of the app, you can SNS it, and then a DAO then now has full control over the code base and things like that. I think that that's a very novel use case. So I kind of participate in some of the governance of some of the apps there. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Well, I gotta ask about a couple of things on the technical side. Okay, so you mentioned subnets. Typically, when I hear about the term subnets, like this is a term that I always look at the hub and spoke model of Polkadot or something that's typically associated with Cosmos, right? Because of the cycle that I came in like 2019, right? I know that you guys were making a big splash in like 2020, 2021 when you had I think the ICO or I forget what the actual alphabet soup of whatever that was, but it was a big splash then. But like my question is like explain the subnet model and the canister model because like many people like honestly like I didn't know about canisters until I started doing some high level homework and I thought like oh wow this is kind of unique and interesting and I just think it would be a disservice to like not touch upon that at least on a high level.
Yeah, I'll oftentimes, depending on who I'm talking to, I'll use the word smart contract instead of canisters because that's kind of the closest parallel to what a canister is. A canister is basically a smart contract, but it can serve WASM, so that allows you to host a front end, back end, and data all within the single smart contract. That architecture is actually kind of the unlock for why ICP is a great vibe coding host platform. So that's the canister. Is if you hear canister and you get confused, just think smart contract that can do everything. And then subnets is, so the way ICP scales is through subnets. Subnets tend to be 13 nodes, although they can go up to like 40 or 44, because the more that just adds the decentralization to the subnet. Each subnet has its own ledger, so that's kind of like the way you can scale ICP is as the network grows, you just add more and more subnets. So subnets are just the grouping of nodes that maintain the same consensus.
And also you mentioned Motoko, right? Like, why did you pick up Motoko? Like, it's so interesting. Like me and some people were talking about languages for each chain, right? Like Haskell with Cardano, Solidity with Ethereum, Rust with Solana, right? Like, why Matoka? Like, what is the secret sauce there? What was the reasoning there?
I'm not entirely sure. I wasn't at DeFINITY. I mean, Motoko was like really early in the evolution of ICP. I think it probably just comes down to like when you have like a novel architecture, you want a programming language that takes full advantage of that. I will say, when we went to mainnet in 2021, it was, you could either do Motoko or you could do Rust as the two backend programming languages. We've added TypeScript and Python as well. And a lot of that is just you can, what you kind of find is like I mean, as anything in life, if you add friction, people are less likely to do it. Learning a whole new language like Motoko is really hard. So if you want to attract a lot of developers, like you want to do TypeScript, which is the most popular. Like if you want to attract Web 2 developers, you should be doing TypeScript. So I think that's kind of more the history.
Ah, okay. Cool. Sorry. I appreciate that you clarifying that. Yeah, I mean, it's like it was one of those weird things. It's like because I came in with the class of ETH. So it's like Solidity was like the thing that we learned through. And then like going through and looking at Bitcoin stuff, I was like, like why are there learning the new terminology and understanding what is the parlance between these two terms or these concepts, right, is absolutely great in terms of like getting people to be like, oh, I can take the plunge now because I know this is really what it is, and it gives me certain advantages here. So I appreciate you shining light on.
Yep. Yeah. And Caffeine writes all its code in Motoko. So I guess that's part of it too, is AI now reduces a lot of that friction where you're like, I don't even care what language it codes in. Just choose the language that will give me the best product. And so
That's cool.
Nice. Very good. Yeah. So speaking of onboarding into the space, I would love to hear a little bit more about your backstory. Like, how did you get into crypto to start, but then also into ICP, and maybe a little bit about your role at DeFINITY and kind of what you're working on there specifically.
yeah, I mean, I think like most people, I got into crypto through Bitcoin. I really kind of thought of blockchain as just Bitcoin, which I think is like a very normie thing to do. Um, in 2020, I was working for a small vaccine company here in Maryland called Novavax, which became really famous during COVID because we were very early in the COVID vaccine race, due to some like the research and development we had done in years past with SARS. And so the company was like 250 employees, and we like exploded to, I don't know, 2,500 employees or something like that during COVID. I was in the IT department, and so tangentially being in part of the, oh, actually, let me say this. So Novavax got a ton of money, 1.6 billion, I think, dollars from the US government, if I remember correctly. And part of that was like a whole cybersecurity requirement because the vaccines were considered national security risk. I'm guessing when you asked this question, you weren't expecting me to go into COVID vaccines, but it's
It
part of the
wasn't.
story.
Yeah. We get a bunch of comments about the Fauci bros are going to be coming out left or right about it.
Yeah.
But
But it's kind of the origin story. I think it really paints the picture of like what fascinates me about ICP. So when I was part of the IT department at Novavax, like I could just see tangentially how much money and resources we were putting into cybersecurity, and then also seeing the results of that, which is still, there's two very public hacks that we experienced. You could still see, like, you just see behind the scenes that the internet itself is, like, by design insecure, and we keep layering on all this extra layers of technology and technology and technology and technology, trying to make it secure. Um, but it's, it just becomes very cumbersome and still not totally efficient. At that same time, Dominic Williams was out talking about how blockchain and specifically having a consensus mechanism prevents hacks, because you can't attack software that's living on a blockchain without attacking its consensus mechanism. And it just, like, those two things, seeing what I was seeing on the one end or my day job, and hearing that idea of, like, oh, this actually could be a solution to a lot of, like, the IT bloat that you see, um, kind of was like a mind opening for me in terms of what blockchain could use. Right, it's not just a token ledger; it's actually a piece of IT tech stack. So, anyways, I do data and analytics. I just started analyzing data about ICP. I started a blog. The blog got really popular, and at some point, DFINITY said, "Hey, would you like to come to work for us and do the same data and analytics?" And I said, "I've been doing this for free for like a year. So if you're going to pay me money to do it, it's a no brainer." And that kind of led to where I am now.
That's great. Like, it really is funny how, like, it's when we talk to a bunch of people, even like Luke and me, like offline or even online on the pod, it's really like circumstances find you into crypto. Either like you're like you want to rage against the system in a way that you have also, like where you're like, this doesn't fundamentally work, guys. Like this shit is fucking broken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we need to come up with a better system here. And it's like we need to just get rid of this shit. And it becomes like a passion project, which ends up being like, hey, come do this with us. Right. And it pulls you into the startup world in one way or another, either as a founder or it's like, yo, come be core team to like get this mission out, which is awesome. Like that's one of the cool things about crypto.
Yeah. I mean, just from my own experience, I think most people find their way into crypto, just like you said, because there's some sort of values that they maybe don't feel represented in the traditional, whether it's traditional finance or the traditional world in some sense. I don't know. So it's kind of cool to be part of people who just have a strong either vision or a strong set of principles that they're like, I will die on this hill no matter what. And you're like, that there's something very respectable about that.
Yeah. I sense a little Texan in him. It's like
Right.
I see sense a little come and take it energy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So Kyle, this has been really great, kind of getting to dig into ICP with you, hearing about your story as well. So, if folks want to stay connected with you personally, and then also with DFINITY ICP, what's the best way for them to stay in contact with the work that you do, including like your blog and that type of thing?
Yeah. So at DFINITY is the Twitter handle for DFINITY. That's probably where you get the most up to date stuff on internet computer. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm just at Kyle Langham, just like Kyle, and then Langham. You can follow me as well. And haven't been keeping up now that I get paid to do my data and analytics. I don't publish it all as often as I probably should. So I don't really keep up with the blog as much. But yeah, Twitter's usually where you'll find me.
And when's the next live stream for Caffeine AI?
I want to do it. It's either going to be tomorrow or Thursday for myself that I'm going to do. Dominic Williams he does much better. Like he does like more professional demos of it sometimes. So you can follow him as well. But the next one I'm going to work on is either tomorrow or Thursday, depending on when I can make some time to do it.
I'm looking out for that notification on Twitter when you go live on it, because I will definitely come check it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get in those comments and just start rating. If you can get me to have to quote the man in the arena because you're just like tearing me down so much, then that's the
It's
key.
basically like, okay, we need to get this Ash and the Wild guy off the fucking chat because he's just like constantly just shit posting in here, and he's saying good things and bad things, but it's just the frequency is too much. Uh, dude, no, but that's fucking awesome, man. I'm so stoked that you came on here, and thank you for sharing your knowledge about this, and then also like giving us updates on everything that's happening with ICP. Like, it's really cool to see other people succeed and I think the caffeine is going to be really, really interesting and a real momentum changer.
Yeah, appreciate that. I hope so. That's the idea.
Yep, for sure. Awesome. Well, Kyle, again, thanks so much. Really appreciate you being on. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to connect again soon and definitely catch you on the live stream.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I really do appreciate having me on. A phenomenal show. Just this conversation was a lot of joy for me. So, thank you guys for the opportunity.